in physics, math, computer science. Drones are the best you can use to actually bring these fascinating topics and the workforce of the future, and to really enable students to understand things from the very beginning.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 314. What are the current trends in academia related to drones? For that question, we head to Berlin, Germany, and speak with Christian Janke, assistant professor in the College of Aeronautics at Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. Embry Riddle Aeronautical University is the largest accredited university system specializing in aviation and aerospace programs, with its main campuses in Daytona Beach, Florida, and Prescott, Arizona. It also has numerous online and academic programs offered at satellite locations. In addition to being assistant professor, Chris is also program coordinator for the Bachelor of Science in Unmanned Systems Applications program. Following his assignments as a helicopter pilot in the German Armed Forces, he moved into research where he coordinated national and international research projects in the aerospace field. He is a trainer for human factors and crew resource management, instructor for safety management and risk assessment in aviation, and auditor for quality management. He has 10 years of first-hand market experience advising industrial clients in the fields of aviation, electromobility, and security technology. He supports startups in the founding phase and is a member of the Dronemasters Academy platform, which teaches STEM topics to children and young people using drones and robots. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Chris talks about the use of small drones in education, the safe integration of UAVs into the airspace, the potentials of urban air mobility, and the prevention of drone misuse. But before we hear from Chris, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great idea for a show and want to share it in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's learn about the academic work with UAVs with Chris Janke of Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. Let's pick up the interview where I ask Chris to introduce himself.
My name is Christian Janke. I'm an assistant professor and program coordinator for the Bachelor of Science in Unmanned Systems Application at the worldwide campus of Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. I'm based in Berlin and I'm teaching worldwide students, and I have also faculty and programs worldwide.
Chris, what do you teach related to drones?
The program is called Bachelor of Science in Unmanned Systems Applications. We also have a Master of Science in Unmanned Systems. The majority of those two programs covers the aerial domain. We also talk about ground, maritime, and space, but since the demand from the workforce, the economy, and also from graduates is highest in the unmanned aircraft domain, we made that a majority of our coursework.
How long have the courses been offered at the university?
Both programs are pretty new, so in an academic perspective, so they are between 5 and 6 years old. And the bachelor, for example, is 120 credit undergraduate degree program, having between, depending on your specialization, 25 and 35 courses. You can go really from the bachelor to the master. We also have a combined pathway program where you can go directly from bachelor to master. So that is something that we just created, I would say, really 5 to 6 years ago.
Now, my understanding of Embry Riddle is that it has a deep aerospace and aeronautical program. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Embry Riddle Aeronautical University as a whole, meaning the presence campuses in Daytona Beach, Florida, and in Prescott, Arizona, and the worldwide campus, built together the Embry Riddle Aeronautical University as an entity. And this is actually the oldest fully accredited aviation specialized university worldwide since 1925. Since the beginning, as the name says, aviation has been a core of our programs. And whenever something new came up as a technology or instance or process that is related to aviation, such as cybersecurity, human factors maintenance, data analytics, and unmanned systems, we created a new program for that. So being very agile, we were able to adopt the needs of the industry, of the graduates, and to offer programs in that field. And we have been the first offering unmanned systems program in general. We have the same program at the presence campuses in Daytona Beach, Florida, and in Prescott, Arizona. And one thing that we also have a very strong outreach is distance education. So we have started really in a time when there was no online. So we were doing distance education in pen and paper, video cassettes, music cassettes, and then later CD-ROMs. And then, of course, we switched to online. And we now have an award-winning learning management system that is able to offer the courses in a fully online environment to students worldwide.
There are 2 campuses in the United States, but you're in Berlin. Are you teaching remotely?
I'm based in Berlin, and I taught from Berlin the courses that we offer there. If we have the right setting and the cohort is big enough, courses in presence, that is possible, especially when it comes to, for example, flight training, practical flight exams. When we offer the Trusted Operator program, that is also part of our SUAS operations minor. But myself, I based in Germany, in Berlin, was teaching courses all over Europe. It might be possible that in the future I have the opportunity to teach in Daytona or in Prescott, Arizona. But in general, we have over 100 campus locations worldwide.
From an academic perspective, how do you size up the training and education requirements for UAV operations?
I compared some legislations and regulations worldwide when it comes to commercial operations of SUAS. So what does it mean to have a commercial drone pilot license in any country? And that's not only industrial countries such as Europe or the United States, also in threshold and developing countries. What I see is a common theme and a bigger pattern is that normally when it comes to skills and knowledge, there is actually very little demanded by the state or by the regulatory authority by drone pilots, remote pilots. So there is normally a theoretical exam such as the Part 107, or in Europe we have the A1, A3 or the A2 training, but that is very theoretical, very short. And I would say that this is not enough. So if you want to be a safe and responsible remote pilot, you need a little bit more than that. And that's why I think it's always good to look at other opportunities such as the Trusted Operator program, which is I would say a bottom-up approach where industry comes together and says we need to find a common standard to assure quality and to give safe guidance for potential clients in order to understand who is a good pilot and who not. So right now, if you have from a legal point of view, only have Part 107 or the legal training that you need by the state. But it's more than that. So it's checklists, procedures, airmanship, and also organization and administration in order how to file a good waiver and what needs to be done in case of emergencies and all the documentation that is involved. So I would say there's at least 2 or 3 days of training needed to be able to be a very good and safe, responsible drone pilot. And for the other side, for the customer and client side, it's also a good way to distinguish, to say, okay, this person or the company has a badge, for example, the Trusted Operator program. And I can be sure that these persons and the entity has been trained by a trainer and examiner that is able to do that because he has the background.
Does the instruction that you provide through the university touch upon that? Or is it mostly academic or theoretical applications?
Both programs, the Master of Science in Unmanned Systems and the Bachelor of Science in Unmanned Systems Applications, are academic programs. They have a strong relation to operations, but you can also specialize in administration and development, for example. And we have elective version in the master program and in the undergraduate program, a minor, where you can really do specific courses where the Trusted Operator Program, top level 1 certification, is already integrated. So we not only make Part 107 mandatory, but we also offer the opportunity in that SUAS operations minor at Embry Riddle worldwide to get the top level 1 certification, which is a great asset and reputation if you want to go out and be self-employed drone pilot offering services, or go to a specific company and work there as a remote pilot.
At Embry Riddle, are the courses part of an overall larger unmanned systems program?
We tried to integrate all domains in both programs, both the graduate and undergraduate program. And we have as a majority unmanned aircraft systems, but also ground, maritime, and space. If you want to decide for another pursuit and degree and program, it is possible that also in that program, unmanned systems will be taught. For example, in aviation maintenance. We have a Bachelor of Science in aviation maintenance. And I know that in that program, because drones and unmanned systems and robotics play an emerging role in maintenance as well, that this is also covered in that program. But if you are looking at specific unmanned systems and unmanned aircraft systems, those two programs are the right choice for you.
How popular is the curriculum? I mean, are students gravitating to unmanned systems?
Absolutely, yeah. So students also, we see a demand from the workforce, from potential employers asking. And I know that both programs have been growing since their first rollout, and they are still growing. And we really want to enable those two programs much more worldwide. And we have a strong demand from students and growth rate in the United States, but also worldwide in Europe, for example, where there is really a need of a comprehensive academic education with a good background to bring that to potential students, to graduates, and to the economy.
What's the situation like in Germany?
It's also growing and gaining acceptance because those industries who are the ones that really actually use the unmanned aircraft systems and the drone services and actually pay for it, they are adopting it. So the drone economy itself has been around since many years, so consisting of manufacturers, service providers, pilots, also software companies. So this is the drone economy itself. And if you have a larger event, everybody meets and stepping on the toes, but actually the companies that are using those services, that they will make up the drone economy of the future. So large infrastructure corporations, building companies, healthcare, transportation, logistics. So those are the companies that are slowly now adopting the services, and due to ongoing regulation, making it better and easier possible to fly, for example, beyond visual line of sight. We see that there is a strong outreach to that, and some companies are choosing in Germany, for example, to do it in-house. So a large company that is running an electric system utility company is deciding to monitor their long-range power lines, not as they did before with helicopters. Pretty loud and expensive, and yeah, there are many downsides to that. But now they want to do it with drones, and they can do that because regulation allows them to fly, for example, beyond visual line of sight if they have a, for example, specific operational risk assessment. That is one of the new things that the European regulation that is rolled out as we speak over the European countries can bring to the table. So we have the open category, which is basically what we have in all member states. I would say what was possible as to right now, visual line of sight, remotely piloted operations in a smaller, low risk area. But if you want to, for example, fly long range, BVLOS, or over people or at night, or maybe a heavier drone, that is not the open, but the specific category. And specific because you need a specific risk assessment. And that is ZORA, which enables the pilots and their companies to utilize drones in a much easier way than it was possible before.
So is it kind of like our waiver system here in the United States? Yeah,
you could say that. It's comparing it to the waivers in the United States, a little bit more complicated because the ZORA process itself is a longer process that really involves a lot of calculation of the air risk, for example. So the air risk is the risk of mid-air collision, for example, and you need to mitigate that with certain procedures and technologies. And you also need to look at the ground risk. which would, for example, relate to the damage of property or the injury of persons. So there are also technologies and processes to mitigate that. This is involved in the ZORA in general, and it's a process that you can also outsource to companies who will do that for you so that you can fly BVLOS or fly over a city at night, for example.
Yeah, it sounds like a fairly complicated process, especially for smaller companies.
That is correct, yeah. So it's really something where you need a lot of experience and background, and it is really something where specialized personnel is needed in order to be able to help you with that. That's correct.
Is that required throughout Europe or just in certain countries?
Well, that is required throughout Europe, and it is basically the requirement in every European member state, and that is really one of the elements that has been laid out in the new European regulation.
What else is happening with regulations in Europe?
One thing we have been seeing that grew and was initiated was the registration. So before that, we were not really sure how many drones and drone pilots we had in Europe. But right now, since we have a system of registration, it is really possible to have transparency. And we are now assembling those data and those numbers. It's early to tell, but there will be a good overview, I think, in the next 6 months. That was something where the United States, with the registration system from the FAA, was much more advanced, having a much better overview on the actual numbers of drones itself and also remote pilots, maybe even in a distinction between recreational on the one side and the commercial pilots on the other side.
What's your sense on how people in Europe view drones?
Well, it depends always on the stakeholder view, I would say. So if the person or the organization or entity comes from environmental protection, data protection, and really could see drones as a threat, it takes a longer time to convince them that this is not a problem or a threat to their stakeholder issues. In general, if it's the population, the industry, it's really getting better, and drones are seen more as a tool, like a ladder or a telescope. And this makes it easier to explain what you're doing. So I'm a commercial drone pilot in Germany for more than 5 years now. And when I'm out in the field wearing a vest and flying, so how people approached me really changed over the years. And I think that's the same in many European countries. It is also something that you can see when you compare it's just a funny example here. So if you compare the Google image search results and when you type in drone, if you did that 5 years ago, you get very much different pictures than you do now. And even if you did that maybe, 8 years ago. So what comes up there as pictures is that what people see as a drone in the perception. And it's getting better. There are interesting applications, not only commercial, making specific missions and applications cheaper, faster, and safer, but also even saving lives and being more sustainable when it comes to agriculture. So I believe the drone economy will really come to all other industries because they are relevant in every other industries as well, robotics from the air, by using drones to provide certain services.
Chris, tell us about your own commercial operation. What type of work do you focus on?
So until now, I did mostly aerial photography and inspection. So using pictures from a commercial off-the-shelf drone to create images, videos for a client. And I only did that on the side because I like being outside and actually flying and doing a specific mission. But right now I'm focusing more on the thermal side. So I currently looking at the application itself and also to get certification as a person responsible and certified in thermography in Germany. And I'm also comparing the sensor systems that are applied to the drones. So the construction industry right now is heavily interested in the applications of thermography because, for example, many buildings in Germany need to have something like a quality report for their sustainability performance. So not losing too much heat through the windows, for example. That is something that will be mandatory for almost every building in Germany in the next years. So what they need to do is do the measurement, and there will be a growing demand for that, for thermography.
Can you walk us through the steps you take when you conduct a mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts a couple of days before by a mission planning on the map, talking to the client, getting permission and really looking at the possible problems that could occur if you look on the map. Because actually in the German regulation, and it's also the same in many European countries, you have a lot of areas that are no-fly zones. They are related to, for example, governmental buildings, the highways, army institutions, everything that is related to security and infrastructure that is near that. So you need to stay at least to those no-fly zones 100-meter distance. And if you want to go under that, you need to file for a waiver. And what is also something you need to look at is residential areas, because data protection is actually a very important aspect in many European countries when you use the camera, which is basically not really something that is related to the drone, but it's more something where you need to do your homework in terms of saying, okay, the only data that I will capture are for this mission and this mission only. And if I'm ready and finished with that mission, I will delete them so that there are, for example, no personally identifiable data saved there or even published. So that is something very specific to Germany, I would say, when it comes to data protection. But in general, that is the paperwork preparation a couple of days before. The day before, there is the mission preparation, weather briefing. Then there's another checklist before I drive to the location. You know, batteries full, SD cards empty, and the other way around when you return. So, for example, also learn in the Trusted Operator program how to actually really prepare from beginning to the debriefing and how to improve your own performance in safety all the time. With every mission, I learn something new. So may it be a new aspect of the weather or something that is situated near the area where I fly. And it's also good to have that kind of documentation ready in order to always stay on top of the mission and safety.
In Berlin, other than the property owner, is there anyone that you need to notify or get permission before the mission occurs?
If I just want to do an inspection and I fly in visual line of sight, remotely piloted, not over people, not really. So it's free for permission. This is what the regulator says. When it comes to flying more far away or over other areas, or if it's in the control zone of the Berlin airport, then I need to go to the federal authority in Berlin-Brandenburg to ask them on specific permissions to do that. And that will be granted by a case-by-case basis.
Getting back to the classroom, why do drones belong there in the first place?
That is a very important aspect to start very early. I'm a STEM coach, and I support many projects when it comes to bringing drones to the classroom for kids and teenagers. So many people saw really that in STEM education, you cannot really start too early to use little aerial robots to explain aspects of computer science and mechatronics and autonomy. So I think in every high school, when it comes to STEM topics, in physics, math, computer science, drones are the best you can use to actually bring these fascinating topics and the workforce of the future, and to really enable students to understand things from the very beginning. And so this is why I think it's so important to really start in the schools to use drones and they can be very small. So there is no risk involved. So it's possibly more risky to do an experiment in the chemistry lab. But if it's a very small drone, and they can be programmed, they can be flying. So it starts with the motoric skills to pilot the drone, and it then goes really to the understanding on what is the capacity of the battery and how long can I fly this drone if it weighs that much? And where does the energy come from? Can I charge the drone with solar panels? And many other things. And then it goes to computer science, programming. So it's to make it autonomous, maybe put a sensor on it, sensor in the loop operations. This is something you can do with a 14-year-old and explaining how programming works. Start block-based using basic function and commands, and then go even to a higher level programming language, such as Python.
That sort of progression, do you see that actually happening in Berlin?
Yes, so we see that some schools are adopting those little drones in the classroom. It really always depends on the teacher, the initiative from the teacher, and also, of course, funding and the opportunity. So we did a lot of education for teachers to really take away potential problems and reservations towards drones. Because if you say drones in the classroom, that is something that not everybody would really sign in the first place. You need to explain it and to bring understanding for that topic to the teachers, to principals, parents, and I mean, the kids love it always. So it's a great thing to do. And hopefully this will be something that will be seen much more in the future in many classrooms worldwide.
Where did your interest in drones come from?
In my previous professional life, I was a helicopter pilot in the German army. And in this time, there were not really any consumer drones out. So the possible encounter between a helicopter flying in very low level airspace and a drone, we didn't have that. So we were looking out for birds and cables. And when I left the army, that was the time when the first consumer grade drones came to the market. And I was always fascinated by the stability of these platforms. And then I bought one. I think I bought one of the first DJI Phantoms that were on the market. And yeah, ever since then, I was always interested in how the technology is evolving. And not only the flying platform itself as a flying robot being very stable and autonomous if you want, but also the payloads and the sensors that comes with it and the opportunity what you can do with the data, and to see how that is evolving, what you have today in consumer grade electronics when it comes to stereo cameras and even LiDAR. I mean, the latest iPad generation has LiDAR in it, and you can do more or less professional inspection with it. Maybe not professional, but you see it's getting more affordable and smaller. And I think that is a trend that provided the pathway to the success of drones, that everything was implemented in cell phones, the micro electromechanical systems. And that was the success for drones as well. And that's why I find it so fascinating to see where this goes, not to speak of eVTOLs and flying cars, of course.
How are German manufacturers of drones doing in the marketplace?
More and more when it comes to professional applications, German manufacturers are really getting more and more traction and success. So in Germany right now, really, when it comes to construction sites, the long-range inspections, that is something that many professional drone pilots and also the specific clients and contractors would not do with a DJI product, but maybe with a German-made eVTOL, for example. We have a strong background in hybrid systems that are vertical takeoff and landing and can switch to fixed wing in forward flight. We have many manufacturers actually doing that, coming from Germany and providing good service to clients in Germany and Europe, but also exporting that technology worldwide.
From an academic perspective, what innovations do you see on the horizon in the industry?
I would say two things. One is the growing autonomy of drones that we see that will actually lead to more safety, I think. So right now, and that is very good to get into the application and into the economy. It's more or less remotely piloted. But when we see that drone logistics becomes, for example, something that is feasible and also from a regulatory perspective possible and allowed, this will only scale if it's autonomous or at least supervised by one person. And the same goes for applications that are near infrastructure. So there are, I don't want to name any names, but there are some consumer grade and prosumer grade drones that are coming out now or are still out that are very, very safe. And it's very hard actually to crash them because they have a surrounding that they can recognize, and they not only use GPS, but many other means of technology to actually navigate and localize. So the remote pilot can concentrate more on the payload and on the sensor to actually fulfill the mission. So that would be one thing, the autonomy aspect, and also the data analytics aspect. I think that will be opening the door for drone applications when the end user of the drones and the services will recognize what is actually possible by the post-processing and the analytics of data that have been captured. May it be 2D automosaics and something multispectral for the agriculture industry, or 3D with a point cloud and a texture overlay. That will be really, really important there for many, many industries, and that will boost even more than it is doing today the application and the adoption of drones in many areas.
What do you see happening in urban air mobility in Europe?
Many initiatives are now emerging and also growing in the different areas in Germany, but also in Europe, bringing together potential clients such as transportation companies and also the manufacturers of those platforms. And the interesting thing is that there is a need, for example, to provide a more high performance propulsion so that those flights can be longer from an eVTOL, for example. And I think in the near future, we will see much more test flights where actually persons will fly from A to B in a step-by-step approach, increasing the complexity of the mission. And that is something that we really will see. I think until we see a fully acceptance of an eVTOL, a flying car transporting people, that will take some more time when it comes really to the experience that we have. How many flight hours do we have between failures or catastrophic losses? And that will take really some more flight tests and experience with that. But I think it's growing and we see actually, for example, in China that this is a thing of the present, so that people sit in those platforms and they fly from A to B and it's all autonomous. So there is not even a pilot stick in there. It's just a screen where you type in where you want to go. So I think it will take some time until people will adopt that. But when it comes to urban air mobility and these applications, logistics would provide a more or maybe a faster approach in learning how this goes. So this is something that we also see in many European and also German cities test campaigns for drone logistics.
Do you think we'll see urban air mobility find its way into the university system, either as a curriculum or a class?
Yes, absolutely. I actually just updated a recent course bringing in that topic. And it was about the general course about unmanned aircraft systems. But since this is a new application, also related to business operations, it's important to understand what kind of business model lies behind that, and also what the regulatory aspects are, the caveats, and the environmental and sustainability aspects that are underlying this. So yeah, actually, this is why we have a very strong outreach to industry. We have adjunct faculty that come from industry. We have industry advisory boards. So it's not taking long to make the curriculum more current. And I think something we take very, very serious to be relevant, to have applicable learning outcomes that are something the graduates can use when they come into the workforce. And that is something we have throughout all degrees and programs. We have on average a 95% job placement after graduation with a higher salary than before. That is something you can measure. And we also have surveys with alumni and future employers if the learning outcomes and the curriculum was actually what they needed. When we see something that we need to change, we actually do. And that's why we have such a high standard.
Is there an entrepreneurial culture at Embry Riddle that can help with the transfer of technology?
Yes, some of the programs have that. So in many of our aviation-related or unmanned systems-related programs, we have courses and curriculum content that is related to business, on starting a business. And that is something we also have at the presence campuses, where there are actually really places where startups can go and set up the business and grow and develop the products. We have that in Daytona Beach, for example, where there's actually a brick and mortar area and building where the companies can develop and the alumni and students can work together in order to build up companies. And yeah, we strongly encourage that. And we are very happy to see that when our alumni do that.
How is unmanned transportation management systems integrated at the university level?
The UTM aspect is something we also have in the program as well. So that is one of the enablers, the key enablers for future airspace integration of unmanned and autonomous systems. Really comes down to frequency and spectrum management, to connectivity, what is actually a good way to have a harmonization of manned and unmanned airspace. And that is also part of the curriculum as well.
What excites you most about the drone industry?
What excites me most is really the pace on what you can see of the growth and also the internationalization. So there are in many countries, maybe the same for industry and threshold in developing countries. Those are young topics, emerging technologies that apply to many industries and that can help traditional and conservative industries such as construction or healthcare or transportation or even defense to bring in this new technology. And that's why I see a lot of combinations between our alumni and graduates, for example, going into legacy companies, bringing in this fresh wind and explaining how unmanned aircraft systems can be used to provide a benefit.
And for my last question, what message would you like to leave regarding the drone industry and the role of the university?
So my recommendation really would be, and that really goes out to everybody who's interested in the future of aviation, to get into the topic and learn more about robotics, autonomy, and unmanned systems, because in many areas that will play an emerging role, and it's always good to put that into your portfolio. May it be in an academic education or a professional way, or as I said before, getting that into the classroom in schools and high schools to provide that visibility and knowledge as early on.
That's it for episode 314 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Chris Janke of Embry Riddle University in Berlin. I want to thank Chris for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Embry Riddle's Unmanned Systems program, or want to connect with Chris, check out the website at erau.edu. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.